the worst team in football, the most disappointing team in football. That's right. The LA Chargers stay out here breaking their fans' hearts. And then we had the Raiders, who had just got shut out.
Yes.
Like, not like, oh yeah, we had a bad game, we scored 17 points. Like, no, they didn't score any points the week before.
And they only gave up 3 points that same week that they lost. They were members of the worst top 5 because of that.
Yeah, because of that. And then fast forward, Austin Eckler banged up. So we have Josh Kelly in there at running back. And then he fumbles right away. There are multiple fumbles. I believe the Chargers had 3 turnovers in the first half. And then there was like a muff punt that they had. And it wasn't anything particularly special that the Raiders were doing on offense. They were just turning over the Chargers. They had a short field most of the time. And then once a year, we get a sighting from our friend, Brandon Bolden.
Friend of the show.
Friend of the show, Brandon Bolden. And Brandon Bolden had another game where he just randomly showed up and went off. People don't know where it comes from. He'll be in Miami, New England, Buffalo. He'll just come out of nowhere and then just have an absolutely electric game. And then it's with how reactionary this week is, and I'll touch on the Raiders, then we can go in the Chargers, is Antonio Pierce like, oh, this isn't a guy we can carry forward to next year. Yeah. This is a guy where you allowed 3 points and you still lost the game because you couldn't score on offense. You're benching Jimmy Garoppolo. What are we really doing there? And then turn around. Then you get 63 points on Thursday night. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, this may be a guy. And it's been like the same thing with the MVP conversation. One week, Dak's the MVP. The next week, Dak sucks and he's not the MVP. And it's been the same thing with Antonio Pierce here recently. And this was just a magnificent beatdown. And I texted you, I'm like, if this doesn't get Staley fired, I don't know what will.
Yeah, no, it's funny because this game, I came into this game, I'm like, no Justin Herbert. We have Easton Stick. Austin Eckler's banged up. We're going to see Josh Kelly and perhaps some Isaiah Spiller. Keenan Allen's banged up. And then you have Quentin Johnson. That guy couldn't catch a cold. This guy sucks. I'm like, and then against the Raiders, who just didn't score whatsoever. So I'm like, you know what? I boycott this game. I'm not going to watch this. I'm going to go over a girl's house, hang out with her instead. I look at the score just periodically. I look at the first quarter. They're down 21-0 in like the halfway point of the first quarter. I'm like, oh my God. I texted my friend, the one that we've mentioned several times on this show, and read his sacred texts. I'm like, dude, don't watch this game. And then I check again. It's 42-0. And then I check again. It's 56-7. I'm like, please tell me you're not watching this game. He finally texted me. He's like, nah, bro, I refuse. Fuck the Chargers. Word for word. That was my reaction the whole game. I'm like, what is happening? And then you texted me Brandon Bolden. I'm like, uh-oh. It's once in a blue moon. You'll see Brandon Bolden. He'll appear from the shadows. He's always lurking. You never know where he is necessarily, whether it's New England or Buffalo or Miami. And now he dawns again in the silver and black.
Yeah. Brandon
Bolden returns as a Raider, and he has 3 rushing touchdowns in this game. I think he rushed for 100 yards.
At least 2, yeah.
And he ran all over the lowly Chargers. The Chargers, the only bright side for the game for the Chargers is that the lowly Brandon Staley is officially gone.
Yeah, the lowly Brandon Staley is officially gone. And all of last season, we were like, why is Brandon Staley like being clamored for like this great head coach? Like, I get it. The Chargers are finally going to the playoffs here, but it always seemed like Zach Taylor would get unfair criticism in Cincinnati, and then Brandon Staley would get unfair praise in LA with the Chargers. And always seemed like, oh yeah, we had Anthony Lynn here, so we need to come in and bring in this guy who's uber aggressive, but you brought in someone who's also uber stupid. And I'm not saying he's a dumb head coach by any means. Jalen Ramsey liked him as their defensive coordinator when he was with the Rams, but that doesn't mean you're going to be a good head coach. And that doesn't mean when you blow a 27-point lead, you should be surprised when this guy gets fired. People are like, has Brandon Staley lost the locker room? Is this loss an indication of that? Oh my God, the sky is falling in LA after that game. I'm like, did you not watch them in the playoffs blow a 27-point lead in Jacksonville? Like, if that wasn't a clue enough, how do you even call yourself a football commentator where you can go on TV and like, I'm so shocked that this happened with the Chargers this season? I'm like, are you actually shocked this season that this happened with the Chargers? Because all of last year we were like, that Browns game, even though they won it, I'm like, why are you going for it when you're literally still on the elf? They went for it when they were in field goal range, and they had no business doing for that. And there are multiple games where they went for it where they shouldn't have. And then their record in one-score games was like 6-13 at that point. And you're like, oh, this lost the locker room? Has Brandon Staley lost the locker room of the Chargers? I'm like, I don't know. Does blowing a 27-point lead when you just picked off Trevor Lawrence 4 times in the first half and then your defense looks like Swiss cheese in the second half look like a guy who lost the locker room? There's a guy who's snippy with the media like, I'm still calling the plays here. All good coaches have one of these horrific losses like in their career. Like, really? You're surprised that this guy had lost the locker room and got fired? Like, no way. We said Frank Reich, Brandon Staley, gone this season. And we were right. Where the Brickyard was right.